2017 has been an extraordinary encouragement to me. We've been talking about the first love that Jesus has for us since January kicked off for us. We read in 1 John chapter 4 that we love God because He first loved us. He took the initiative. He started the love relationship with every one of us, and He's going to keep that relationship going all the way home. We've talked about how it's unconditional, how it's unexpected, how it's unstoppable, and how His love never gives up. I have been absolutely ruined by first love, and I am grateful. My name's Brian Phipps. I'm one of the pastors here, and it's an honor to be with you today. I've been chasing Jesus since right before I turned 20 years old. That's been a number of years. I turned 50 this year, so it's been almost 30 years chasing after Him. And what's amazing about this pursuit of Jesus and the love that He has for us is as much first love as I have been able to drink, it's just a thimble's worth compared to the ocean of love that He is. I'm looking to have more and more of that love drive my life every year. We're in a series right now called First Love Breakthroughs. And the assumption is we all could take in a little bit more of that love and see some of the other stuff in our life move out. That's where we're going. So grab your notes this morning and let's take some notes here. And here's the first blank. It's actually the big idea for the series. We all need a first love breakthrough, if you'd write that in. We all need one. Nobody's arrived. Everybody needs a breakthrough. Everybody can use a little more love. Let me pull a Dan Sutherland on you. Turn to your neighbor and say, you need a little bit more first love. Go ahead. You need a little bit more. I need more than you, but everyone needs a little bit more. How does that first love breakthrough happen? This is how it is. Write this in, if you will. Breakthroughs happen when we allow Jesus to get rid of the barriers. It says remove the barriers, but He's got some work to get done, doesn't He? There's some stuff in the way, some spiritual blockage in our spiritual arteries. And breakthroughs happen when we allow Jesus to remove those barriers that block our experience of first love. And one of the barriers that we're going to talk about today is this. It's identity theft. We're familiar with this when it comes to a financial type of thing. If you've been hacked, if you've had a credit card lifted from you at a marketplace, transaction of sale or whatnot, trusted somebody too much. A lot of folks have dealt with this thing called identity theft, where they take your social security number, whatever, and take advantage of you financially. But there's another type of identity theft that's even more prevalent. And it happens to every follower of Jesus that is alive. What is that identity? What's the identity that we've been given? What's being stolen? How is it being stolen? How do we protect ourselves from this identity theft? And then is it possible even to have what's been lost restored? That's where we're going today as we talk about first love breakthrough. Let's start with answering the question, what is that identity? The Bible makes it very clear what the Father thinks about us. These words that we're about to read from Matthew 3:17 are what the Father in heaven, God, said over His Son Jesus as He was coming out of being baptized. And as brothers and sisters of Jesus, as children of the Father who is in heaven, these words through Christ also define us. You're looking at them, you might be reading them. What I want to encourage you to do as we read through this is to put your name in there. This is God's stamp on your heart. Listen to what it says. A voice from heaven said, "This is my Son, whom I love, and with Him I am well pleased." Do me a favor. Repeat after me. I am His son or daughter. Awesome. I am loved. I bring God pleasure. Which one of those was hard to say? The last one? Any of them? That's what He's saying about you. Somehow when I got up this morning and brushed my nasty teeth, God was taking pleasure in that thing. I don't know how. But here's what He's saying. You're His son. You're His daughter. He loves you. He's well pleased with you. That is your identity as a brother, as a follower, as a sister of Jesus. This is what he's saying. But somebody's trying to take that identity away every stinking day. The Bible says that his name is Jesus, and he is up to this, constantly providing us a persistent identity challenge. Will you write that into the blank? Every day, life is a persistent identity challenge. He's not trying to steal numbers from our accounts. He's trying to actually convince us to take stuff into our life that blocks us from receiving his first love. I'll give you this illustration from our 13-year-old Caleb. He's a growing boy, he's getting big, plays football, all these other things. You know, when he comes home from school, he's a little hungry, so about 4 o'clock he goes in and he raids the pantry and consumes 3/4 of a bag of potato chips. And of course, he's laying over there lethargic on the couch. And then Carol will say, hey, we got a nice dinner here, we're gonna have salmon tonight. And his response is what? I'm not hungry. Why? I don't know. He's not hungry because he's filled himself with junk. And there's no room left to take in a wonderful, healthy meal that's been provided for him. And that's what Satan does to us. He tries to get us to stuff ourselves with other things so that the real stuff can't get in. There's junk. But here's the good news. Jesus has already faced this identity challenge, and he won. He won the ultimate identity challenge. And he did it so that I can experience an identity breakthrough. He wants you to have that identity. He wants you to live in that identity. And he defeated Satan in the ultimate identity challenge so that you can. Where did that identity challenge take place? It happened right up there on that mountain. This picture is taken from the ancient city of Jericho. Jericho made famous by Joshua taking down the walls and all that stuff back in the Old Testament. A lot of folks don't know that the Jordan River passes right through that area. That's where Jesus was traditionally baptized, and then he leaves that Jordan River and he goes up into the Judean desert, the wilderness area there, and the Bible says that he went up there for 40 days right after hearing these words of identity. And he goes up there to spend the time in isolation with God, preparing himself for the 2.5 to 3 years of ministry that he's going to embark on. At the end of this 40 days of solitude and fasting, going without food, going without fellowship, all these other things, Satan comes at him and challenges his identity in the form of 3 God-sized temptations. And here's what we're going to do. We're going to look at each one of them because Satan's using the same type of temptations to pull identity away from us today. And we're all going to walk out of here going, yep, he's doing that to me too. I'm losing identity in every one of those. But look for the one that's got the biggest ding, ding, ding going along beside of it. And we can ask Jesus today to begin to have an amazing first love breakthrough right where we are. He's in the business. See which one has got your name on it. Identity challenge number 1. Maybe this is it. And that's the appetite challenge. Will you write that in? The appetite challenge. And the question that we want to ask here is the Father's provision in our life enough for us, or does our appetite demand more than what God is providing? For Jesus, it was physical hunger. He'd gone without food now for about 40 days. So Satan entices him to go outside of the Father's provision with these words. If you are the Son of God, tell these stones to become bread. Temptation number 1, appetite challenge. If you're the Son of God, do you hear it? If you're the Son of God, going right at the identity. If you're God's Son, prove it by telling that stone right there to become a big old piece of hot sourdough bread with butter on it, toasted lightly with that. Oh my gosh, now I'm all hungry and messed up. But can you imagine how big of a deal that would have been for Jesus right there? And here's what's funny. It's not like he couldn't do it. He could have done it on day 2 when the hunger pains were really bad, or 3, or 4, or 10, or even 36. It wasn't a question of if he could do it. The question was, should he? And for Jesus, the answer was no. 40 days he put himself out in the wilderness to spend time alone with God, going without stuff. because there was something that he knew about our identity. We could fill ourselves with our stuff, or we could just trust the Father for what he was providing and be filled with him. Jesus would later teach to the multitudes on the side of a mountain, "Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be truly filled." They'll get it. I mean, they'll have that sense of fulfillment when they hunger and thirst for him. Most of us can't hunger and thirst for righteousness because we're never hungry or thirsty for anything. And Jesus knew that if we stuffed ourselves full of stuff, we would never have room for the right stuff. So he says no. Now, for most of us, it's not physical hunger that we deal with. It's more of a spiritual or emotional hunger that we have. And we go around looking for stuff to fill our life. You have one of these? There's a whole series out there called Storage Wars, talking about all these people who have the biggest houses in the world, and yet their houses aren't big enough to hold all their stuff, so they got to go buy more house space somewhere else to throw their stuff in. And I don't even know what all is in this picture. Looks like an abacus in there or something like that. But it's stuff. But it's not just material things. It could be anything that entertains us, that we fill ourselves with. You know what they call this thing? They call it Netflix. What is it? Binging. Have you heard this term? I am on a Netflix binge. I'm going to get to the first season and first episode of something, and I'm not going to even use the bathroom till the whole thing's over. Binging. What are we binging for? We're hungry. We're thirsty. Our appetites are demanding something. Jesus says, I don't want any part of it. And that's why he says this: man doesn't live on bread alone or Netflix, but on every word that comes from the mouth of God. I want to be filled with him. Everything else is gravy. I want to be filled with him. Being a son is way more important than having stuff. It's an interesting aha that a lot of Westsiders have experienced over the years. We focus on having opportunities for us to go overseas, to take the love and the mission of Jesus to places where there's orphans starving. We do it in South Africa and in India and Thailand and other places. And when folks leave the comfort of all the stuff we have here and go over there, they have this amazing aha, and it's hard to deal with at first. And it's looking at these children, these orphans that have to share their space with all these other kids, and they only have one bowl of food per day. They have very, very little to clog their spiritual arteries with, so to speak. But they're the happiest, most content, most fulfilled people that they've run into. And these people that have a lot are asking themselves the question, how are these people with so little more fulfilled than I am? And it becomes a faith crisis. And what Jesus knows and what he's wanting us to know is that if we fill our souls with stuff, our stuff gets so clogged into who we are that we are hungry and thirsty for what's real, our identity. You're loved, you're cared for. And we miss out on it because of all the stuff. If you need a first love appetite breakthrough, here's what Jesus says: my identity is not in what I own. My identity is in the one who owns me. My identity is not in what I own. My identity is in one who owns me. So if you're a dude and you're standing there at Best Buy and you're looking at that 70-inch television with a 4K resolution and you're going, I gotta have this. Or if you're looking at the new phone, or if you're looking at a wardrobe or shoes, whatever the situation is, if I'm standing there thinking, I gotta have this to be okay, you don't need it. Don't let stuff own you. Your identity is in the one who owns you. Let's look at the second challenge here, and this is the approval challenge. First one was the appetite challenge. The second one is the approval challenge, and the question here is the Father's approval primary? Do I want his thumbs up more than anybody else or not in my life? This is probably the biggest challenge for me personally. This is one of the three that has my name on it the most. I actually had a seminary professor who was known for saying, I don't care if you learn anything in my class, I just want you to like me. I get it, man. I get it. I learned more from him than anyone else. We all long for approval, and Satan went right after it with Jesus. He said, if you're the Son of God, notice, going after that identity again. If you're the Son of God, he said, throw yourself down and angels will lift you up with their hands. Satan had taken Jesus to the highest point of the temple and said, throw yourself down and let the angels pick you up. He said, basically saying, put on this big show. Now, what Satan knew is that the people in Jesus' day, the way they could authenticate whether you came from God or not, whether or not you were legit, is if there was a sign from heaven. They're always asking for signs. Show us. And if something big like that happens, we'll know that you are from God. Now, the problem with the people that Satan was trying to tempt Jesus to impress is that they were approval addicts themselves. It was all about the external. It was all about the outside. It was all about these things right here. Now, tell me you haven't logged into Facebook before just to see how many likes you had on your last post. We do this. We like approval. And that's what they wanted. And Jesus was like, man, there's no way. Here's what I want to say. Don't put the Lord your God to the test. I don't need to do anything stupid in order to force God's hand of approval. He's already told me that he approves of me. He says he is well pleased with me. I don't need to do anything else. He rested in that identity. This last November, a popular couple was faced with a pretty significant approval challenge. If you know Chip and Joanna Gaines, they've got HGTV's show Fixer Upper. And last November, BuzzFeed, kind of a digital media organization, did a hit on them with an article that basically said that because the Gaines family attends church, they probably won't allow a same-sex couple on the show. Now here's the dirty of what they did. They never researched this. They never talked to the Gaines. They just had an opportunity to make a big publicity stunt, and they pulled it, putting these folks in their name and their company in a really awkward spot. And I imagine their PR people went nuts. What do we do? And I imagine the scientists in their PR department, because it's a big show, I bet they went crazy going, all right, let's pull the stats of all of our viewers and let's see where they are. And when we respond to this thing, we're going to make sure that we have the most likes when this is all over. Now, before I wrap up this story, I think it's true that we all find ourselves in situations like this on a daily basis. We've got choices we need to make, and some people are going to approve of it, and other people aren't. What's going to help me advance? What's going to give me the most the popularity with the people that I'm around? What's going to keep doors open here and there? And when I'm at the club, all day long, we're faced with who's going to approve of us or not. And how powerful would it be if in every situation we were given the pause long enough to just stop and say, God, what would get your applause? What would get your approval? What would get your favor right now? And what I love about the Gaines, I don't know them well, but what I love about their response is that they took some time and they let the conversation go on without them responding for over a month and a half, waiting for God to kind of show them what would honor him in his response. And when they finally shared their response, you can tell that the first love of God had broken through into their life because it pours out into everyone else's. This is what they write. This past year has been tough. In my lifetime, I can't recall humanity being more divided. Plenty of folks are sad and scared and angry, and there's sound bites being fed to us that seem fueled by judgment, fear, and even hatred. But Joe and I refuse to be baited into using our influence in a way that will further harm an already hurting world. This is our home, and a house divided cannot stand. If there's any hope for us to move forward, to heal, and to grow, we must learn to engage people who are different from us with dignity and with love. And Joanna and I have personal convictions, and one of them is this. We care about you for the simple fact that you are a person, our neighbor on planet Earth. It's not about what color your skin is or how much money you have in the bank, your political affiliation, your sexual orientation, your gender, your nationality, or your faith. That's all fascinating, but it cannot add or take away from the reality that we are already pulling for you. Now, most people in this room, I think, are probably wondering, okay, where are they going to land? Which side? And that's where all you got to do is follow any post about any of this anywhere online, and you'll get both sides, and it's pretty violent. What's missing there is the first love of God who wants to crack into that conversation. And what I love is that they created the space. They refused to be baited into this and said, God's going to get the chance to speak over this through us. Interesting, they probably just made everybody angry. It's pretty sad. But I think God's up there going, nice one. It's kind of the way I handled it when I was down there. And I'm looking for more and more like it. If you need a first love approval breakthrough, if this is what's keeping you from becoming fully alive with Jesus, meet the approval challenge with this. My identity is not found in the approval of others. My identity is rooted in the approval of the one. I am well pleased, he says. Look at your neighbor and say, I don't need your approval. I don't need it. I like it. I like it a lot, but I don't need it. Let's look at chapter 3, challenge 3, identity challenge number 3, the authority challenge. The authority challenge. Is the Father's authority final? Does Jesus get the last word in my life and in my daily decisions? Notice here that Satan actually drops if you're the Son, and he goes right after it. He says this, I will give this to you, he said, if you bow down and worship me. What is it that Satan says he'll give to him? He had taken Jesus to a place where he could see all the kingdoms of the world, all the authority, all the power. And he's saying, I'm going to give this to you. All you need to do is bow down and worship me. Surrender to me. Submit to me. Now, this is a God-sized temptation because if Jesus was to change allegiances and worship Satan, he would be able to skate past probably the most horrific first love tragedy in the history of the world. Jesus came down here to love us, to restore us, to actually die in our place. And the Father's authority in his life was, hey, go down there, live the perfect obedient life, turn away from every temptation, and then at the very end of it, be willing to give over that credit, go through rejection from those that you came to love, go through torture from the people that you came to love, and then die and forgive the people who are actually doing all of that pain to you. That does not sound like fun to me. And Satan was coming and offering him the fast pass, the bubble wrapped version, the stay safe version. Wow, how tempting would that be? I want it easy, don't you? I want it safe. I want it predictable. I got the means to make it happen. I don't want to have to choose to put myself in that spot. Here's what happened. Satan was tapping into something that Jesus has, and many of us have, if not all, and that is ambition. Ambition. And ambition's a godly thing in the right hands. Jesus had ambition. He says, my passion, my food, my drinks, to do the will of the Father who, when he gave to me the work he gave me to do, that's my passion, that's my ambition. My ambition is actually to see this first love take over the whole world. So there's nothing left but love and nothing left but a full restored relationship with my people. We need more folks that have that godly drive. But here's the challenge with ambition. It's really easy to get hooked on authority once you have it. It's really easy to idolize influence once you have experienced exerting it. Power tends to create a hunger for more power. You see it in business. You see it in religion. You see it in the military. It's why Tolkien puts it in the whole trilogy called Lord of the Rings. It's just hard to steward power. And the crux of ambition and power is all in whether or not the authority and the ambition that you've been given is submitted to the rule of the Father. I've got a friend named Andy who started a business a couple of years ago, and he's actually written God in as co-owner. And he wants this business to be God's business. He wants it to be his the whole way. So even though he didn't have to do it, he created a spiritual accountability board. And I'm one of the 2 guys on it. And we meet monthly. And he says every month, ask me questions to see whether or not Jesus would still be my customer. Would he walk in the doors of my business and pick me over my competitors simply because of how my business and my life are being run for his glory or not? And that was what Jesus was like. He says, I choose the Father's authority over my own ambition. He says, worship the Lord your God and serve him only. Satan, you've got an attractive offer. There's no way I'm giving my identity to you. No way. How did he choose obedience, even painful obedience? Because he knew that the Father loved him. He knew that the Father was good. He also knew that the Father wasn't safe. But he said, I'll rest in his goodness. I'll rest in his love. And look what he got for that. It says in Philippians 2, one of my favorite passages in Scripture, he humbled himself and became obedient to death, even death on a cross. Therefore, God exalted him to the highest place and gave him the name that is above every other name. Ambition on your own terms gets you nowhere. Or if it gets you somewhere, it's only for a short time. Ambition driven by God's authority, that's a powerful thing. If you're running yourself right now into a challenge of authority, use this. My identity is not fulfilled through my ambition. Wow. I'm looking at a lot of powerful people. My identity abounds in my abandonment to the Father's authority. If you'd write that in. My identity is not fulfilled through my ambition. That might be where the brakes need to be put on right now. My identity abounds in my abandonment to the Father's authority. What's fun is that an authority breakthrough happens. A great picture of that is baptism. And baptism is a sign where we say, I'm done with being in charge. And we go under the water, kind of symbolizing how we're going to die to us being in charge. It's a picture of Jesus in the tomb, but we don't stay there. We get raised back out of the water as a picture of resurrection into a life where Jesus is in charge. And that is a beautiful, beautiful life. And if you are ready to make that kind of choice, that kind of decision to be baptized, we're going to be doing that on Easter. All you have to do is just grab one of those cards in front of you and put baptism, your information, drop it in the box on the way out and say, I want to be baptized at Easter. Or if you're part of a family system and you want to join the family team in their family baptism environment, that's next Wednesday, the 8th. The information is in your bulletin, and you can choose to take that symbol, that picture of identity. That's where Jesus heard these amazing words that we focused on today. A voice from heaven said, this is my Son, with whom I love, and with him I am well pleased. Boy, I hope you hear these words. And I hope you can see and feel your name right there in the middle of it. There's too many of us walking around with our identity just kind of blowing in the wind based upon people's approval, our own appetites, the authority problem. And I want to share a story with you of just how binding and blinding this identity thing can be. This whole identity crisis pushed itself to the surface when I was about 25 years old. I was one of these guys who was so needy in this identity situation that I was kind of more in love with the idea of being married than I was in love with the idea of finding the right person to marry. And so I kind of found myself needing to be needed and all this. It's just one of that stuff you do to just kind of fill yourself up. And I was just actually engaged once before I met Carol. And it was a very unhealthy engagement. And I'm going to show you just how unhealthy it was. And you're gonna laugh at me. And it's not okay, but it's going to be okay. I was married to this gal, and one night we were hanging out, and she had this kind of somber look on her face. And I said, what's wrong? What did I say? Married. Oh, I was not married. I was engaged. Forgive me. Thank you. Hey, it's always good to have somebody who's got your back right there. So it's good, it's good. Because Carol will get that text here, probably already does. No, probably already does. So we're engaged, and we're out. She's somber, and I said, what's wrong? She said, well, I can't marry you. And I said, well, why? And she said, because you're too short. For real. And you know what, I'm not making this up. You know what's sad about it, though? Is I wasn't offended. I was too needy to be offended. And I found it my responsibility to convince her that she didn't need to be so shallow. Jesus could set her free from that. So a 2-hour conversation, I feel better at the end until the next time we're together when she's looking somber. And I said, well, what's wrong? She said, well, I can't marry you. And I said, well, why not? She said, your nose is too big. I am not making this up. Your nose is too big. I didn't really know that was true. Saw somebody in the hall after last service. They said, yep, it's too big. I don't know what I'm going to do with it. The appetite challenge was lost because I was too hungry for the relationship to realize what was going on. The approval challenge was in full flaming gear because all I wanted was for her to like me. And I did the same thing again, tried to convince her about how she didn't have to be so shallow. Third time we're together, she says, I can't marry you. I say, why? She says, because you're going to be a pastor, and I probably need to marry someone more like an attorney or somebody. And I said, dear God, why would you? No, I didn't say that. But she had a, I don't know what the reason was, but again, I fell for the same thing. And by the grace of God, a couple of days later, Jesus reveals to me, dummy, don't you realize she does not love you for who you are? And it clicked. And that's when the stinking authority challenge came into play. That's when he said, do you love me? Do you trust me? Phipps, you think I got this figured out for you if you will finally get rid of the junk that's in your soul so that I can allow love to crash through your life? And I'll never forget how freeing that conversation was when I called her and I said, you're free. Go. It hurt. It hurt. But I remember how freeing it was. And I remember telling Jesus, you are my first love. I don't want anybody else. I'm not going to chase any women at all. If you force one on me, I'll take her. But you're going to have to force her on me. That's what happened. I made that commitment. And then about a year later, Carol wanders into my life. It's an amazing story. I'd love to just bore you to death by telling you all about it. But Carol comes in, and I'm thinking, I'm putting the wedding dress on her and all this. I'm going back to that old thing, that appetite thing. And every night when we would come home from a date and I'd drop her off and I'd come home, I'd go for the long walk, and I wouldn't quit walking until I'd given her back. And if you give her back to me tomorrow, I'll take her again. But I'm going to give her back until you prove to me this is your plan and not my own. And man, it's awesome. And I'm so grateful that first love was persistent enough in my stupidity to clear out the junk that was in my life that I was forcing into the equation with my own needs. And I allowed Jesus to do that as well. What is your big challenge? How is your identity being stolen? Is it appetite? Is it approval? Is it authority? Hear these words. You are the kid of a loving father. You are loved by your father. You bring him pleasure, and it is time for a first love breakthrough. It's time for a first love breakthrough. I was 25 when that identity crisis started to bubble to the surface. And I sure am glad I allowed it to just keep on going until it just broke out. And here's what we want for you. We want for that same thing to happen. If during this series, or even if right now, you're feeling that first love just inject itself into you, who is Christ, don't stop it. Allow it to happen. In fact, act on it. right after I'm done here in less than 45 seconds, friends of mine will be down here that would love to pray for you. And in fact, we want to invite you to pray for the whole church, everybody to experience First Love Breakthrough. And this Wednesday night, we're going to be gathering in the South Sanctuary. The information's there where you can join us and pray for God's love to just break through in all of us. In fact, I invite all of us to end this time together with a prayer that's listed right there at the bottom of your notes. I invite you to join me in praying this with me right now out loud. Are you ready? Jesus, you tell me who I am and that no one else has a vote in the matter. Therefore, I abandon any image of myself that is not from you. I am not defined by what I have. I am not defined by what people think about me. I am not defined by any authority other than you. Right now, I believe what you say about me. I believe you love me. I believe you are pleased with me. I believe I am your son. I choose to walk in the freedom of your identity today. Amen. May that be your prayer, friends. Walk in the freedom and the power that is the identity of Christ. God bless you. See you next time.